Hi guys, nice to see you again. We're here for another book related video. If you're new to me and my channel, I'm Molly and I do book content here on YouTube. I do a mixture of Christian and non-Christian and a mixture of fiction and non-fiction. And that's about it. Sometimes I do the odd vlog, but not always. There will be one coming up either hopefully before this video. It's Tuesday and I'm hoping that I'll upload it maybe tonight or tomorrow on Wednesday, but we'll have to see. Because if you didn't know, I wasn't able to upload for a few weeks, but I was still filming. So that is why I'm talking about extra days. Because normally I just stick to one a week, and usually I try and do it for Saturday morning, but that doesn't always work out. But that's usually what I aim for. So, with the introductions out of the way, let's get started with my May wrap up. And I have to tell you, I have read a lot of books for me. I am someone who isn't known for her big wrap-ups. I'm not one who usually reads 10 or more books in a month. Those who do are incredible. I don't know how you do it, but I'm a slow reader, and I don't know what are the reasons. There might be. There probably are, but that's only the one I stick to because that's the one I know for certain is why I am a slow reader. I also often don't read multiple books at once. I sort of do, where I often have an ebook on the go, as well as a physical, because I usually read that at night when I'm in a car, if I'm coming home from somewhere, because it's dark. I can't read a physical book. But that is happening a bit less these days because of this thing called summer. So yeah, but it does still happen. And then otherwise, if I'm reading a book I want to prioritise, then I'll read the book. But yeah. So yeah. With that introduction out of the way, let's talk about my books. So I have read 9 books. Now, to be completely honest though, one of the books I started in May but finished in April. Well, no, June, sorry. And actually, technically that's true, because one of them was a book of poetry. But I am going to count them in this wrap up because I have finished them before filming this video, and they were for May. So I'm going to count them. But for complete transparency, I did finish them in those 2 books in June, and I will tell you what they are when we talk about them. So, first I am going to talk about the books that I read on my ebook. And if you've noticed, I've added more stickers. I gave in and decided to spend loads of money. Well, I say loads, they were quite cheap. But I bought some different collections of stickers that are book related, and also Christian stickers as well. But anyway, we're not here for those. Basically, I'm telling you that's why there's more on here, because I put some of them on my Kindle. There's even one on the front. There you go. It's like a heartbeat. It's like a heartbeat for books. I like that. So anyway, let's start with the first ebook that I read for May. So it took me a minute to remember what the month was. So the first book that I read is another Agatha Christie Poirot book, and this is Mrs. McGinty's Dead. I don't know which book this is in terms of when in the Poirot series it came out, but basically it's not the first one. So obviously there was mentions of another character who you won't necessarily know unless you've read the earlier books. I haven't, but I am aware that, you know, been mentioned. But again, like when I read Murder of Roger Ackroyd, it didn't affect anything in terms of the story, so it was fine. So I don't think you have to read them in order necessarily, or certainly not these ones. I mean, it'll always help for you to know about that character, but it's not important for you to necessarily have known who the character is beforehand, basically, because there's already allusions to the fact they know each other and all of that, so it doesn't really matter too much. So I read this. This is the first ebook that I read for May, and I gave this, I'm having a look at my reading log in my book journal. I remembered it again this time, almost forgot though. So I read this and gave it a 5-star. Now, there's a twist, and I have to say, compared to the Murder of Roger Ackroyd, the twist wasn't as incredible. But it's still a good twist. I still didn't know who it was, and it still made sense. But yeah, I didn't guess it, and as usual, they're all hiding something, even if they're not the actual murderer of Mrs. McGinty. And yeah, it was really good. I was gripped from the start. It took me a bit longer to read it, but that's because, like I said, I wasn't always prioritising it, and then I did. But it still captured my attention, which is really good. It's what you want in a book, because when I would read it, I wouldn't want to stop. So it's really good. The chapters are short. It's clean. There was one instance where one of the characters did swear, and I think it was the B word, the one people often use as a term that is usually used for a female dog, but it's just that once. Don't hear anything before or since of any other swear words. There were probably uses of, the Lord's name in vain, but I usually expect that in secular mainstream fiction and non-fiction, I guess, as well, but specifically fiction. But I really enjoyed it. There were some great characters. Yeah, I thought it was really good. I was trying to see if there's anything I added to it. It was just a really good book. It's more like along the lines of a cozy mystery. It's not fast-paced, not thrillery in that respect. But it was really good. I really enjoyed it. There were even some funny bits as well. That's always good. I like a good multi-genre book. Or at least, books that have other things in them as well as their main genre. But yeah, I really enjoyed that one. And then, whilst we're on my ebooks, the last ebook that I started and finished was The Village by Caroline Mitchell. This is a mainstream thriller, and I would say adult thriller. And it was really good. It was very thrilling, obviously, but it was gripping, especially there was even a day, or should I say a night, where I basically stayed up till 4 a.m. trying to finish it. I didn't finish it, but I very nearly did, so the next day, it was already the next day, technically, but, later on in the day, I read and finished it that day. So, The Village. So, what is there to say about The Village? Well, I have to say, I did have some issues with it. I gave it 4.5 stars, because it was really good. However, there were definitely things that I would look up triggers for. Not because they were particularly graphic or in-depth, but there were just different things that would be occurring, and basically the more happening in one book. It's not the biggest book in the world. It's not like a novella. It's not a short story or anything, but it's not a really good book. So yeah, there were mentions of catfishing, a minor one. Initially, that catfishing wasn't actually catfishing, but I don't want to say anymore because it does get revealed at the end, basically. But it does become catfishing because someone hacks that account, basically, and tries to catfish her, who is a adult. And this person who is they're catfishing is a 17, between 16 and 18, I can't remember her age, young minor. So yeah, not great. And then that same character who reveals himself but not as online yet, also then tries to take things physical, shall we say. Nothing actually happens. The stepmom interferes and stops it from happening, because, to be fair, the daughter was using it to distract him so she could free herself, because he didn't like the stepmom. So nothing happens with that. There's obviously lots of swearing. There's also mentions of child abuse in terms of I don't know what the word is for it, but it's when the parent makes their child ill when they're not ill, and it's basically that, and exacerbating their illness and actually making them ill because they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. That's the sort of child abuse it is. And yeah, so there's that as well. I can't remember if there's any others. Do I mention any there? No, not that I remember. That I think that was it. Other than that, there's a decent amount of swearing, so just be warned about that. Other than that, there's no sexual content. There's a budding, but not less. There's a budding, a relationship between the minor and another girl her own age. But nothing really, because it is not like a part of the story really, if you know what I mean. So it's not a big part. The only thing that happens is they kiss. So it's not interested in any sort of relationships. There isn't really one shown. Yeah, and basically there were technically what people would call twists, but I guessed them. I essentially knew what had happened. Sometimes it took me a while because I wasn't quite sure, but I did basically know what happened. There were reveals at the end that I expected with a character and stuff like that. So it wasn't the most, not exciting because it's not about that, but the plot wasn't unusual. It was predictable. And it was set in England, by the way. The village is set in a village somewhere in England, and if I remember, I think the village is actually real, the actual physical village, but it's not real characters as far as I'm aware. So, and the village is quite hostile. The people in the village, they're very close knit, and obviously there will be villages who are more hostile to strangers, but not necessarily, if you know what I mean. And basically, yeah, it's hard to talk about because I never like to give any spoilers. Yeah, it was alright. It was good. I did enjoy it. But I just felt it was quite a lot of not great stuff happening all at once, not including the actual mystery and thriller to do with the mystery. So, yeah, it wasn't, it's just the way it is. Yeah, and basically the village is about this woman who is a journalist, and there's been this disappearance mystery of this family of three, father, mother and daughter, basically, who disappeared mysteriously 10 years ago. And basically this journalist is wanting to basically try and solve the mystery if she can, and so she ends up buying the cottage and pretending to move there with her husband and stepdaughter. For those of you who like Scottish, the daughter and her father, the husband, are both Scottish. So if you like, you can imagine the Scottish accents, but the village is in England. It's not in Scotland. But yeah, and basically it's all about their experience in that cottage and trying to figure out what had happened to that family. And you do get two timelines as well. You do get the timeline of the original family who disappeared, as usually from the daughter's perspective, as well as the police officer, like sheriff. I don't know what it is in England, but like he's like the lead police officer in that village, basically. You get it from his point of view, as well as the original daughter's point of view of the family who lived in that cottage. So yeah, you get all of that, and yeah, not really much else to say. Oh, that was it. Another allusion to children and abusive stuff is that police officer and the daughter of the original family in the cottage. However, it's not real. It's just people's assumptions. So yeah, the only thing is the reason for it not actually being loving children too much, shall we say, I thought the reasoning for that was a bit not unbelievable, because things like the reason they said do happen, but there was no clues to it really, other than how he felt about the daughter was definitely more like familial than sexual. But other than that, there's no other clues to that being the case. So I kind of thought it was a bit unnecessary in that respect. But you know, there we go. But it was fine. I'm not necessarily put off the author, but I'm not particularly interested in reading more from Caroline Mitchell. But if I do hear a blurb about a book of hers that sounds good, then I'll definitely try and give it a read at some point. But otherwise, I'm not too interested in her books. So the next book I'm going to talk about will be my last non-physical. And it's not because I read it as an ebook or an audiobook. I did read it physically. However, my grandma's borrowing it. And that is An Echo in the Darkness by Francine Rivers. This book is book 2 in the Mark of the Lion series, Welsh trilogy. And yeah, so I'll put that up on one of these sides. Again, I forget which side it is. But anyway, I'm usually reasonably centered-ish, so there's usually space on either side. But yeah, so yeah, my grandma's gotten into Christian fiction. She's gotten into it because of me, because I've been reading it and telling her about it. She's been interested, and she recently just finished the first one, so I gave her the second one. So yes, she's currently reading that, and that's why I don't have it physically. So let's talk about it. I loved it. 5-star. Is anyone surprised? No, I'm not. And and I read it a lot quicker than I read the first one. I started it on the 29th of April and finished it on the 4th of May. Yeah, you heard it here, folks. About a week, or just under, thereabouts. I'm not going to take the time to count, because that requires actually remembering if there's 30 or 31 days in April. And I'm not going to try and do that right now. But I loved it. It made me do all the emotional things. I was crying. I thought it was lovely. I loved seeing all the character arcs and faith journeys. I loved seeing Marcus and Hadassah. And I mean, it wasn't unpredictable with the story. It was basically a lovely, happy ending at the end. But despite that, I still loved it. Everyone who you want to get saved gets saved. It's brilliant. And the book is mainly from Marcus's perspective. So initially in the first one, you mainly get Hadassah's perspective, but then obviously you still get Marcus and... oh no, what's her name? Julia, and... you know, Atreides. You still get all of you still got all of their perspectives in the first book, but Hadassah was like the main character, so to speak, whereas that swapped to where Marcus is the main character. Atreides doesn't show up in the book, although he is briefly mentioned, because obviously it had some of the characters meet and all of that. And so he is briefly mentioned, but nothing else. Now, if I remember correctly, he is the main character in the third book. But the cool thing is, if you're not really interested in the treaties, you could just stick with the first two books, because they do wrap up nicely. So if you're not interested, you could always not read the third one. I'm going to, because I'm interested. But, yeah. But I loved it. It was full of lots of lovely faith and prayers again. Oh. Francine Rivers is just like top tier when it comes to Christian faith content in her books. She's like up there with the Bible. Like the Bible is like here, and like she's like there, because like she's, well, maybe a bit lower than that, but anyway, she's really high up. Like, I haven't read that much Christian fiction, but she is like up there. I mean, so far I've not really read anything quite as rich yet, but I will preface again, I've not read that much. And speaking of Christian fiction, here is my first physical, although obviously Echo in the Darkness was physical, but I don't have it with me. But the next book I'm going to talk about, which was my final book, and that is A Match in the Making by Jen Tuano. This is book 1 in the Matchmaker series. This is a romantic comedy, I would say clean fiction. Now, it is from a Christian, is it publisher? Yeah, publisher. This is published by Bethany House. But I found that it's more clean than Christian. There's a little bit of Christian morals, I guess, and mentions, there's even a church service talked about in here, and a couple of other talks about the sermons that their reverend did. But that's it. There's no praying, really. There's no... You could read it as a non-Christian and just think, oh, well, it's the 1800s. Of course, they're going to talk about a church service, because most people will at least go to church, even if they weren't Christian. Shorter book. It's kind of like that, really. It's no Francine Rivers, shall we say. So, yeah, I mean, there were moments where they're, praying for safety or something, but all it says is like, it's like when you get like a comment of someone going, I'll pray for you. It's like that, they're like, sending a prayer for their safety sort of thing. Like nothing else. There's no writing out of a prayer. There's not really any mentions of any scripture. There's no mentions of them even being in the word, other than brief mentions, as I said, about church and one church service. So that was really disappointing. I think I'll give it maybe a 4.5 star, because I do love this book. I saw a recent video of Anne's from In Search of Wonder. She was talking about Jen Tuano and Georgette Heyer, and saying how similar they were. And I was literally thinking, before she said that, when she started talking about Georgette Heyer first, I was like, you know what? This book reminds me of Georgette Heyer's books. So that was funny. Because it's a really funny book. It's, again, it's a Regency. I assume it is because it's the 1800s. So it's very much like Georgette Heyer. I think if you like Georgette Heyer, you'll probably like these books as well. Just beware, don't go in expecting much Christian content, really. But it was really funny. I was emotional. I loved the kids. Now, at the start, they are absolute terrors, I will agree. But it's just so cute. I just love them. And I love how Gwendolyn, who is the main character, how she handles the kids and how she just handles everything. She's really good. She's very mature. She's 25. I like knowing people's ages. It gives me a good basis on what to expect and knowing how they act and whether it's a bit young for their age or not. But I loved it. I loved that in the end it was more about prioritising. It was very forward thinking, very much like a Christian book in terms of how she is looking for love matches, because she's an assistant matchmaker. She's looking for love matches, not matches to boost someone's rung in society sort of thing, place in society even. So I really like that. I like the message that is throughout this book of marrying someone for love, not for the money they can give you or the status you get in society and stuff like that, especially for these days, these times in the book sort of thing, certainly for the rich people in society. So definitely, I do really like Adelaide, and I think if I remember correctly from watching other people talk about this trilogy, I think Adelaide is the main character for the second book. It's a Sparkle Match, is it? Yeah, it's Sparkle Match. I do have it, so I'll read that at some point. But yes, I did really enjoy it otherwise. I finished it last night. I was right near the end. I was like, I need to finish this. It's one of those books that I find with quite a lot of books in this type of genre, where it all kind of got more interesting near the end, like in the last third or something. There was a moment that was a bit more thrilling near the end, and I knew who was the perpetrator, so I say, because I don't want to say too much about it. In a way, it felt a bit unexpected. I mean, when it started happening, I wasn't surprised, and I knew who was behind it, but the whole time there was no sort of underlying issue being brought up, like an underlying mystery sort of thing. So it did feel a bit, not unnecessary, well, sort of unnecessary, but it was mainly a plot device to further along the children's relationship with their dad, because obviously they're all the main characters, so they're all involved in that sort of situation. So I do kind of understand what that, and also her relationship with their dad, because she's his matchmaker. I'm not saying very much about the characters. I'm always terrible at that. I just kind of talk about how it makes me feel and what I think. I don't really talk about the books, mainly because I don't want to talk much about them, because, you know, I want you to go in not knowing too much, especially with mysteries and thrillers, but with any book, you know, you don't want to thingy, where the words are. So yeah, this book is about a girl called Gwendolyn. Well, girl, she's a woman, she's 25. But a woman who is thinking she's on holiday in Newport. And this is in America, so I don't know where Newport is. But during the summer, and the woman she's supposed to be a companion for breaks her leg, and that woman is a matchmaker. But because she breaks her leg, she can't do much matchmaking. She can't, get about very well because she's in a wheelchair whilst her leg's healing. So Gwendolyn has to become her assistant matchmaker, which obviously makes it not much of a holiday and more of a work holiday, especially when it comes to matchmaking. So, and basically she ends up being the matchmaker for Walter Townsend, who is looking for a wife about 5 years after his wife passed away in childbirth. And he has 3 kids, one older son who's 9, and a set of twins who are 5. So it was lovely seeing the interactions. It's definitely an enemies to lovers sort of, or they weren't really enemies, it's more like annoyances to lovers. Basically, it's like, are you getting on my nerves sort of thing than enemies really. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I did enjoy the faith Christian bits when they were around. I did enjoy those, And I did enjoy how the characters were, especially Gwendolyn. Because she very much embodied a Christian woman. She had those values. So it's not like it wasn't Christian, but it's more like, if any of you have read Jane Eyre, you know that Jane's character is very strong. She sticks to her guns, so to speak, to her morals and doing what's right and wrong. But it's not necessarily a Christian book. So it's kind of like that in terms of Gwendolyn's character, except obviously there is more Christian content in this compared to Jane Eyre. But in terms of her character, you know, she definitely has those values that you get from the Bible. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I recommend it either way. But yeah, and if you like Georgette Heyer, you'll probably like these books. She's very funny. It's very similar to Georgette's books, and the Gentuano's book, I've only read the one, is very much along the lines of Georgette Heyer in terms of that the main character isn't quite like the other characters for that time. You know, she's quite, well, not futuristic, but you know, she's like, she would have fitted in well these days sort of thing in terms of, you know, not marrying for money, like I said already. So yeah, I did enjoy it. It's really good. But yeah, if you're looking for a book like that that has a lot of Christian content, I wouldn't recommend it. So, the next book that I will talk about is a book of poetry. And this is Goblin Market and Other Poems by Christina Rossetti. I recently picked this up about a month or so ago from Waterstones, which is why it's the Penguins cloth-bound version. And it's a short book. It's not massive, as you can see. And yeah, there's not really any illustrations apart from at the first one, and funnily enough, that's that there. That's the only bit of illustrations you get in this book. The rest is all just the poems. And it was good. I didn't hate it. There was actually a section as well that is actually called devotional pieces. And as someone who has lots of devotionals, I wouldn't really call the latter ones devotionals. I would call them more Christian poetry, because it's poetry that is Christian. It talks about, there's like poems about the Trinity, there's poems about Advent, there's a poem, there's like poems on all sorts of things, basically. So I wouldn't call them really devotionals. I would call them more like you would say, like you would talk about Christian fiction. This is more, there were Christian poems. I wouldn't call them devotionals. But there's also ones that aren't Christian, and they come first, and then the last, maybe the last third, all of this one here, all of that is full of Christian poetry. So that was nice. I enjoyed all of them, I guess. I didn't hate any of them. I find it difficult to really get much out of poetry in that respect, but there wasn't any I particularly hated. I think I probably liked the Christian ones more because they were, you know, Christian. But I enjoyed the Goblin Market, which I knew I would because I like my fantasy and creepy things. We're used to. But all the others I didn't hate. I just read them. I like the imagery and stuff like that. Yeah, there wasn't really any that I didn't like about any of them. So yeah, if you like poetry or you want to get into it, you might like this for a start. I don't really read poetry. Did it in school. Funnily enough, it was mostly Shakespeare. So yeah, I don't mind poetry. I'm just not big on it. I mainly picked this up because Katie's Princess Bride-athon has a prompt to complete a book of poetry, so that's what this was. So yeah, I'm glad I completed that one. Yeah, it was good. I think I'm more likely to want to read Christian poetry. And I know that Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day recently hauled quite a bit of Christian poetry, so I might be inclined to do that. And I like nature poetry as well, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just not fussed about poetry really. But there's nothing wrong with it, and you know, it's a great way of, if you like writing but you don't necessarily think you'd be good at doing books, poetry is definitely a good thing you could do, because you might find you could do that better, sort of thing. And I've written poetry before, well, certainly one especially because I had to do it for a project, and I don't mind it. Yeah, I don't have a particular opinion really. I think it's more the thing. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. This I picked up recently at a independent bookstore. Hopefully you'll have seen the vlog. There will also be a book haul at some point, and both of which will contain the bookstore as well as me talking about these books. I say these books, there was only 2 I picked up from there. But anyway, so I picked this up because this was written in the 1600s, and I needed to complete that prompt for Alma's Centuries Readathon. Well, yearly challenge. So yeah, that's why I picked this up. This is a Christian fiction, kind of on the Christian living sort of realm. It's not really Christian fiction like Fancy Rivers or, you know, A Match in the Making. This is more like Christian living as put in a fictional way. And I think this book is probably one of the most important books a Christian should read that isn't the Bible. I think this is a book we should all read and reread. I found it really convicting, I found it comforting. It is full of different imageries as well as, you know, different types of people who you see in the Christian faith. And you also find out why they're right or wrong in their walk with God, basically. And yeah, I loved it. I gave it a 5-star. I definitely recommend it if you haven't read it. It is written in Old English, kind of, because obviously it's from the 1600s. So just be aware that sometimes you might have to reread it, partly because of that. But also you might need to reread it partly because it's just so theologically rich. It's a short book, and it's actually 2 books in one. He wrote a part 2. I don't know when, but he did. So part 1 follows Christian, who is a husband and father to 4 boys, and obviously his wife. And basically the first book is about his journey, and that is all of that. And then the next half, well, it's just over half, but the next part is written from his wife and children's perspectives, and their journeys with God. And it basically, what I didn't like about the second one, when it chronicles his wife and kids, is that you don't know the ages of the kids. So it goes through years in both of the book's lives of the characters, of, you know, Christian and Christiana, who is his wife, and her kids. So obviously it's going to chronicle years of their journey, kind of, or certainly symbolises years. And the only thing is I didn't know the ages of the kids when they started out, because, you know, you get stuff from their points of view, but you get them, you know, it talks about them and stuff like that. And so it would have been useful to know the sort of ages they were from where they started, even if you don't know their ages from when they're getting older and marrying and having their own kids. It would have been cool to know. I mean, it's not really that necessary, but I would have liked that. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, it doesn't affect my rating. I loved it. It's a fantastic book. 5 stars. I think you also read it, myself included. I should reread it. Yeah, I was just looking at my review. Yeah, that was all I need to say, really. Beautiful book, love it. 10 out of 10 recommend. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is Anne's House of Dreams, and this is by Ellen Montgomery, of course. No one is surprised. And this is book 4. Sorry, no, it's book 5. I thought that was wrong. This is book 5 in the Anne of Green Gables series. Anne is an adult now. She is now married. Yeah. She gets married right at the start of the book. But basically this chronicles her adult life when she's looking for her house of dreams and living there. And this chronicles a year, I think, or just over a year of her life. She meets new people. She goes through some things in this book that are quite hard. Now this is classed technically as middle grade, so what does end up happening and the situations aren't heavily described, but it's not like it's unnoticeable when you read it, sort of thing. So just be aware of that. It does tackle a hard subject for Anne in particular. It also tackles kind of, you don't see too much about it, but it also tackles disabilities and the life of a carer. So just be aware of that, because it does showcase the difficulties that the woman who's doing the caring is going through. So just be aware of that in terms of, again, it's middle grade, you're not going to get any sort of triggers, but just be aware of them. But yeah, it's, again, a beautiful book. Again, you get lots of lovely descriptions, you get some lovely characters and lovely character arcs, kind of. I love Captain Jim, he's amazing, love him, and I love the arc of his life that we see in this book. Incredible. There's also an incredible moment where he prays over Anne and another character called Leslie. Again, that is beautiful. It's probably the most Christian bit in this series so far that I've seen, that isn't just catechisms and going to church. It's like Francine Rivers level Christian, that bit, because it's like proper praying, and he's like got his head on both the ladies' heads, his hand on both the ladies' heads. There we go. Absolutely beautiful. I love seeing Leslie's thing, arc, life, and again, gorgeous cover. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. This is a book I read for Santel's Year of Maud. So yeah, so the next book I read, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, and this is a reread. Anyway, so this is a reread. I read this in high school because this came out in 2008, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. So yeah, this is a reread. It's been a long time since I reread it. Really enjoyed it. I think I would have given it a 5 star if I was younger, because I think I would have found it more impactful and more shocking reading it for the first time as a teen. But I did still enjoy it. It was clean. There's only the odd kiss between Katniss and Peter, and yeah, other than that, the only really trigger is that they go through some quite hard things, because obviously this is, well, not necessarily obviously, but this is a dystopian. I would say this is probably more YA because of the things they go through, and because of certain things that end up happening when they're in the games. For example, the mutations or mutations. She spells it with 2 T's, like mut, and then tations. I don't know if that's on purpose, so I don't know how to pronounce it. but basically it's a mutation, and I forgot about those. I forgot about those, the mutations popping up near the end of the games. Yeah, I forgot about that. So when that happened, I was like, oh. Ooh, that was a bit slightly, not upsetting, but I was not happy. I was angry. Okay, some of them are kids. Well, they're all kids. Like 10 years older than the oldest could be, because I think it's 12 to 18. But anyway, yeah. So there's definitely some things that might be a bit hard-hitting or scary. So, I would say this is probably more for like nearly mid-teens sort of thing, like 14, something like that. But there's not really any swearing that I can remember. I don't think there was even uses of the Lord's name in vain, I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it was a pretty quick read for me. But I enjoyed it. I want to continue with the series. And so, yes. I enjoyed it. Well, enjoy. I mean, the topic's not particularly enjoyable, but you get what I mean. Okay. So the last book I'm going to talk about is Down Among the Sticks and the Bones by Shauna Maguire. And this is book 2 in the fantasy novella series, Portal Fantasy. And this follows Jack and Jill, or Jacqueline and Gillian, who you see in the first book. And this is basically all about them. It starts with them in our world, basically. And then the rest of it is them in the other world, basically. And yeah, it's just one part out of all of it, basically, is them growing up to about 12. I think they're about 12. And then they go to this other world. And this other world is sort of based on a mixture of Dracula and Frankenstein. But not quite, there are differences. But yeah, and it's basically their journey, and it ends with them coming back to this world, basically. And yeah, there's the odd bit of illustrations. This is adult fantasy, just so you know as well. This was a lot better than the first one. The first one I think I gave about 4 stars or less. I can't remember what I gave it now. But not 5 stars. I gave this one 5 stars. There was no swearing in it whatsoever. There was no adult content, really. There were allusions to a girl-girl relationship, and to them, allusions to them getting adult, shall we say. But you don't see it on the page. The only reference to it is them rearranging their clothes, putting them back on or whatever. So those are the only allusions you get to that. Because again, it's not a big part of the story. It sort of is at the end, but mainly for certain reasons, not for relationship reasons specifically. But it does lead to them leaving. So yeah, it's not a big part of the story, and it's a novella, so there's not much to it anyway. So yeah, it's not really about that. So yeah, there's nothing bad about it, and actually it makes me want to continue the series, which is good, because I had the first 3, so we'll see. I'm not DNF in the series yet. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fantasy elements, the adventure elements. Their names, Jacqueline and Gillian, are based on the nursery rhyme Jack and Jill, and some of the chapter headings, certainly near the beginning, are based on the nursery rhyme, but they're slightly different. So, for example, part 1 says Jack and Jill live up the hill instead of fall down the hill. And I think it's mostly for the parts instead of actually chapter headings. So So part 2 is Jack and Jill Into the Black. Oh, there are references, I think, to another nursery rhyme as well. So for example, chapter 4 is to market, to buy a fat hen. And I'm pretty sure that's a nursery rhyme, although I don't know what that is. But I recognise it. But yeah, there are references to the Jack and Jill nursery rhyme. For example, another one is to fetch a pail of water, which is to do with that nursery rhyme. So yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed it. So I will continue with the series. And those are all the books I read. I'm just having a look at the reading journal. I forgot to mention that Jack and Jill in Down Among the Sticks and Bones are a set of twins, identical twins, because they're both girls. So I thought I'd mention that. And also wanted to say that even though the Hunger Games is 4.5 stars, which is the same as The Village, I would say the Hunger Games is better than The Village, in my opinion. But yeah, so despite that, them having the same ratings, I do prefer it over the Village. So yeah, that's all of the books that I read in May. I keep wanting to say April, but anyway. So yeah, that's everything I read last month. I hope you enjoyed this video. Not sure what the lighting's going to be like, but hi guys, Editing Molly here. I have realised that I didn't actually mention the books that I use for certain yearly challenges. I know I briefly mentioned a couple of them as I was going through them when I remembered, but I forgot the rest of the time, of course. So firstly, I didn't do any monthly readathons. I was mood reading in May, so there's no May readathons that I was taking part in. But I was still fulfilling my yearly challenges, except I was kind of just doubling up when I could. So I'm just going to go in order of how I've written them in my notebook. There they are. So the first one I've got here is from Teresa from Creatively Faithful. She's doing the cozy reading challenge for the year, and there's no particular one you have to do for each month, but there are 12. So the one I decided to do was coffee and sweets, and there was a couple of different options you could do for that. She initially mentioned like a sweet story, and then I also had thoughts of, coffee and sweets, either one or both, in the story or in the title or whatever, or doing like a photo of reading a book and drinking a coffee with some sort of sweet treat, either at home or in a cafe. So I did it that way. I did a photo of me reading a book with a cup of coffee and some cake. So that was my coffee and sweets prompt. And the book I used for that was the Match in the Making, book 1 in the Matchmakers series by Jen Turano. I don't know if I'll do a picture yet. I'm not sure for each one. It depends on if I have space. If not, you've seen them all before, so don't worry about it. Well, I won't anyway. So that's what I did for that one. Then for Katie's from Paperbacks and Ponytails Princess Bride-athon, I did I write them down? No, of course I didn't. Okay, so oh no, what did I use? Right, let's see if there's anyone I remember. Oh yeah, I did do Fezzik, which is a book of poetry, so obviously that was the Goblin Market and Other Poems collection by Christina Rossetti. So I did that one. And I can't remember what the second one was. I think it was Country of Gilda, Fictional Place. I will check that when I'm editing, but I'm using my phone to film, so I can't really check right now. But I think it's Fictional Place, but if not, I will mention which prompt I actually did complete. And that was for Princess Bride-athon. Then for Alma's yearly challenge, which is the Journey Through Time, there's 2 sections. There's centuries and decades. So with the centuries, it was the 17th century for May, which is the 1600s, and I did the Pilgrim's Progress for that one. I was initially just doing books set in that year, century instead of published, but it doesn't have to be. You can mix and match if you want to, so I used that for that century. And then for her decades, which was the 1950s, I used Poirot's Mrs. McGinty's Dead by Agatha Christie, because that was published in the 1950s. So I did that one. Then for the Read Your Book Self Challenge by Chantel, from Chantel Reads Books or Chantel Reads All Day. Sorry, got there eventually. I did The Prompt is Favourite, which is just a one-word prompt. And I did Genre. And I think... I can't remember exactly which book I used. So again, I will tell you what book it was. I think it was either Sean Maguire's Down Among the Sticks and Bones, or it was The Hunger Games. I think it was the novella. I think it was Down Among the Sticks and Bones. But again, I'll tell you whether I'm right or wrong. That's what I get for not checking. Then I have Ashina from Ashina's... from Ashina, you all know who she is. She's doing a Read Christian Romance Yearly Challenge, and I had to do two during this month because I didn't get a chance to read and finish April's one that I was going to do. So I read and completed An Echo in the Darkness, which I used for her prompt in the series, and I used that for the April one, and that's because I started it in April. And then I did officially for this month, for her challenge, I did Floral Cover, and I used A Match in the Making for that one, because there are flowers on the cover, except it's just not noticeable. Not massively anyway. And then, obviously, as I mentioned in the original video, there was the Year of More challenge that Chantal was also doing. And obviously, May was Anne's House of Dreams, which I read and completed. So, yes, that is all of the yearly challenges that I did and completed in May. I hope that cleared things up. And I apologise for not checking before filming, but there you go. At least we can write things in, can't we? So that's something. So yeah, I will see you all in past me to finish the video. I don't think that made any sense. But we will resume to the normal... we'll resume to normal programming now. What did you read in May? Did you have a really high star that you really enjoyed, or was there a low star that you did not enjoy? Let me know. I didn't really read any non-fictions. I don't think poetry counts as non-fiction. I assume it doesn't. Let me know if it does. I'm not quite sure. But as far as I know, I haven't read any non-fiction. So yeah, I will leave you all to it. I hope you all have a blessed rest of your week. Whew, try saying that fast. So yes, I will leave you all, and I hope you all are well. And yes, God bless. Bye.